let's talk about the return statement and return values of functions. Now, we ended up with the last video by using the REST parameters, and we were console logging things inside the function, but it doesn't give us a reusable unit. It doesn't serve the purpose of what a function really should do, which is having a self-contained piece of logic which repeats the same task in a reliable way over and over again. Now, let's start off with our function. We're going to call this our make car price again. We're going to use the REST params again because I want to demo things for you. Now, in the last video, we did something like the total equals the params dot reduce. We had the previous, we had the next, and then we used an arrow function to simply add the previous value to the next value. Then we went ahead and said console log, we log out the total, and finally we had make the car price, and we entered some prices that we might want to add together. Now, the purpose of a function is to be able to call it over and over again, such as this. But once we've called it again, we're not in fact doing anything with it. So for us to be more productive and be able to understand that we can return values from a function, let's first look at what a function doesn't give us. So here we have the make a car price function. So here I'm going to say this is the total price, and we want a result back from the function, and we're going to bind that total that we're getting down here again to this constant variable. Now, how do we do that? Because we're inside this function scope here, and we're just logging out this total. Now, before we go any further, let's go ahead and just log out this total price, because this is interesting by default. So when I save this out, we'll see the word undefined. So why are we seeing undefined? Is it because when we declare a constant and it doesn't have a value, it's undefined? Almost, but it's actually, in fact, the function is returning implicitly. So functions will essentially do this under the hood for you. If you don't write this return statement, the function is just going to return anyway. Once it's finished processing, it'll go line by line, and then it will say, hey, my function's done executing. I now need to return. Once it's returned, we then get the result bound to the variable, and we can go ahead and start using it. So this is what is called an implicit return. And because we're not, in fact, returning anything, it's an undefined value. It's just simply returning nothing. Therefore, it's undefined. So in fact, instead of returning nothing, let's go ahead and return the total. So we'll go ahead and get rid of our console log, and we'll save this out. Now, it doesn't look like anything's changed because it was on the same line. So let's go ahead and add some total and interpolate that value and finish it off with a backtick. We'll save this out, and here we go. We see 165. We could go ahead and change some of these, add some more numbers together, and everything works perfectly. So that's one way we could do this. Now, while we're here, I'll show you some variations using something like an arrow function. So let's refactor this example. So here we could say make car price equals the params. Like I said earlier, when we looked at function declarations, expressions, and arrow functions, it's perfectly valid. Nothing changes in syntax purposes for the parameters, but we add this small little arrow here. Now, if I save this out, everything will work as intended. So here, using an arrow function could be a choice that you decide to make. Personally, I think this is a little bit cleaner, but it's totally up to you. Now, we could go ahead and refactor this. Can you spot any opportunities that we could perhaps reduce this code logic even further? Now, one thing that we could do is take this entire statement here, delete the constant, and just return the entire reduce itself. And we'll save that, and you can see the refresh. That works perfectly as well. Now, we could go one step further using the implicit return in the arrow function and just delete all of these curlies themselves. So we'll save this out, and you can see we have a nice one-liner which just simply adds things together. Now, it might be, depending on the style which you choose for perhaps a project or your team, that you do favor using arrow functions or favor this kind of approach. But we've examined both of them. It's up to you. This is definitely much clearer to read, as, to be honest, in my opinion, when we use things such as constants and make car price, I would maybe not expect it to be a function, because I tend to use them as variables for things such as arrays or objects. But at least we've examined all of the opportunities here. So what we'll do to finish this off, we'll uncomment this, and what we'll do is rename this to our arrow function. And what I want to show you is how we can call these functions also from inside these ES6 string literals. So here I'm also going to pass in the make car price as well. I'm going to remove our total price, so I'm going to pass them all in like this. So again, we'll add some numbers, and then we can go ahead and save things out. So again, you can see the power of using these ES 2015 string literals and how useful they actually are for debugging purposes as well. We don't need to create lots of constants. We can actually call the function directly, and because this function returns something, it will then be printed out. If, for example, we decided to kill off our return, we would see undefined in the string here, because nothing is being returned to our template string, so nothing is going to get called. So nothing will be logged out. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we're going to take this logic a little bit further and talk about function closures and scoping, which are necessary items for mastering JavaScript functions.